Number 10, nukes. So just like nukes are a pretty big deal to humans, if you launched one right at a Kryptonian, you could hold them off probably for a little while. We see this happen in Batman vs Superman, and it takes inspiration from The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. In the graphic novel, we see Superman go after a nuke, and after he gets a little too close for comfort, he withers up like an old apple. All that radiation gets to him. It's kind of similar to what we see on screen actually. But luckily our sun was in field of view for old Clarky, and he charged himself back from Michael Jackson's Thriller mode back into handsome Henry Cavill mode. And before we continue on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, it does wonders for our channel. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Now let's go check out some more weaknesses for Superman. Number 9, red sun radiation. While our sun can certainly recharge the Man of Steel back into punch mode, red sun radiation can do the opposite of heal. It can damage Kryptonians because it gives off more radiation. So in Superman War of the Supermen, we see a red sun instantly start to weaken and suffocate Superman and Supergirl. It's because red sun radiation replaces the yellow solar energy in Superman's cells, eliminating his powers. Red sunlight was actually the main source of solar energy near Krypton, but Clark spent so much time around our sun on this planet that it clearly works better for him. Except for his mustache, whenever it comes to that. Doesn't really seem like anything works with that upper lip problem that we have. Number 8, high-pitched noises. You ever accidentally scrape your fork against the plate and that high-pitched squeal that comes from it makes your spine want to like pop out the back of your neck? God, it's the worst. My sister almost kills me every time I scrape just a tiny thing, I swear to God. Well, even Superman gets weak when he hears high-pitched noises like that as well. Now, of course, they're much louder than just a fork. See, his super hearing makes Black Canary and Silver Banshee a nightmare for him, because they can get pretty loud. So Batman tries this out against Clark in Batman vs Superman as well, and for a moment or two, it actually works on holding him back. Check it out.
Lex wants it.
So maybe if Bruce had the world's biggest dog whistle, he could mess him up. Or that cowboy guy that sings like really high pitched in the mountains. I'm sure if he belted, Clark would definitely explode, perhaps.
Number 7, Agony. Agony is one of the 4 Life Foundation symbiotes which were forcefully harvested from the Venom symbiote while it was their prisoner. Poor Venom and Eddie. And poor baby symbiotes. Poor symbiotes. The Life Foundation acknowledged that Agony was still too young to control a host, and so bonded it initially to a security officer with the Life Foundation. I assume to kind of help combat Agony's lack of experience. What is unique about Agony? While not as powerful as their parent Venom, they were given enhanced muscles by the government, making them one of the physically strongest of the 5 symbiotes that were harvested, and they can spit acid as well as absorb other chemicals to later use themselves. So it's not nothing, but it's nothing as crazy as what some symbiotes are capable of.
Number 6, the Black Tide. In Action Comics issue 788, Superman is in a world where the air is filled with fire, and a force called the Black Tide, this mysterious force, causes Superman's chi flow to be disrupted. So he suffers in fatigue and pain until he gets a nice acupuncture appointment. Yeah, in the very next issue, we see Clark getting back on his feet with a few well-placed needles. He even asks if they're the world's strongest needles, and she's like, nope. They're just in the right spots. So acupuncture, it's the only remedy that realigns his spirit. Who knew? Number 5, his lack of patience. One of the most intimidating factors of the Incredible Hulk is that he will punch first and ask questions later. It's great, except for when a plan is needed. He doesn't believe anybody is more powerful than him, so he lacks this concern in combat. He's overconfident that he'll win, and in Marvel Team Up issue 13, we see him run into the battle to take on the Skrull Titanus without even consulting the team, and of course, this is the reason he's the first to go down. Even in Avengers Infinity War, he surprises Thanos by jumping out at him, but the element of surprise isn't the only trick. It's not the key here. You can't just jump out, scream, and then start punching people all the time. Some of the time, definitely, but all the time, No way. Thanos punched him so hard he retired. Perhaps patience and better timing could have sufficed. Number 4, lead. Superman is the best at playing hide and seek. He can see through walls, so no matter where you're hiding, odds are he's already found you if he's looking for you. But if you were to hide behind a lead wall, you just may win that game of hide and seek against a Kryptonian. How crazy is that? He has vision that matches the properties of X-ray. They call it X-ray vision, but the thing is, X-rays don't work with lead. That's why when you get an X-ray done at the dentist, they slap that bulletproof vest on you, then they like plug their ears and run out of the room. It's because that's lead. That's a no-go in the hashtag X-ray life. So it can actually help Superman out a bit though. See, as lead can block out kryptonite radiation. So it's, it can kind of help Superman, but it can also be used against him. Superman's got a real love-hate relationship with pencils, it seems. Pencils.
Number 3, Lasher. I feel pretty bad for putting Lasher up high on this list because I actually like Lasher. But Lasher was once bonded with a dog. Granted, dogs are really cool, so no hate towards dogs, but I just mean when that is where you are in comparison to other giant symbiotes like Venom and Carnage, it makes you seem a little smaller than the rest. Although admittedly, I would love to read a comic that was about Lasher's adventures as a doggo symbiote. More dog comics, please. Lasher's unique ability as a member of the Life Foundation symbiote crew was remote symbiosis, which also admittedly is not the most powerful of skills, though it is quite unique, I think, so it's got that going for it. Also, fun fact, Lasher got its name from this unique power, which we learned about through it being bonded to its dog host. Get it? Lasher. Like a leash. Lasher.
Number 2, psionics. Kryptonians are vulnerable to psychic and telekinetic attacks. Superman may be stronger than most things in existence, his mind is still just as capable of being brainwashed like most of us. He's vulnerable to magic, so when it comes to psionic attacks, those tend to work against the Man of Steel in a similar manner. Telekinesis can attack Superman's molecular structure, so when the damage is on a microscopic level, it's hard to overcome and pinpoint. The Green Lantern chip at one point took over the Kryptonian's mind in issue 10 of Injustice Gods Among Us Year 2. He's small but mighty, but he can also think small, so you're kinda screwed. And number 1, you guessed it, kryptonite. Most of us heard the song Kryptonite by Three Doors Down growing up. In fact, now that I mentioned it, it's probably stuck in your head. So good. My first song I ever learned on guitar. That's right, kryptonite. Okay, since the final days of Krypton, its remains were now deemed radioactive after the whole explosion thing, and parts of kryptonite were now floating around in space. This crystalline substance has a specific radioactive wavelength that's lethal to those who are native to its reality. The most common form is the type we see in Batman vs Superman. It's called bright green kryptonite, and it's poison to Kal-El. In the comic Batman and Superman issue 44, he gets a blast of kryptonite shards to the face, and it does not look pleasant in any manner.
Number 10, Martian Manhunter and fire. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I am also not the biggest fan of fire either, and I would absolutely hate being set on fire for so many reasons. But for such a powerful hero who can shapeshift at a molecular level, change his entire genetic makeup to let him pass through solid objects, withstand ferocious attacks, or bend light waves around his body, it just seems a little silly, right? Not to mention that he comes from Mars, otherwise known as the Red Planet or the Fire Star. So why is this one of his biggest weaknesses? Well, long before Martian Manhunter even existed, a race of aliens known as the Burning caused some serious damage with fire in order to create their offspring, which, needless to say, people weren't too happy about. After the Guardians of the Universe separated the offspring into the White Martians and the Green Martians, they were all imbued with a congenital pyrophobia, aka a fear of fire. So it kind of makes sense why he's so afraid of it. Not only does it physically hurt him, but it also scrambles his most prized weapon of all, his mind. This fear and weakness is so intense that when he's exposed to flame, he has the capacity to self-destruct, either combusting into bits or dissolving into rivers of Martian liquid. Want to know more about the Martian Manhunter? Well then check him out in his first appearance in 1986's Justice League of America, number 255. Number 9, The Flash and being too fast. At first, I've got to say this one confused me so much because that's kind of the Flash's whole thing, right? Well, when it comes to Barry Allen, his speed might be his greatest strength, but being too fast puts his life in mortal danger. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, we see the Flash use his super speed to thwart the Anti-Monitor's evil plan, but the speed vortex he creates to stop the villain's antimatter cannon from firing is so fast that it sweeps the Flash away along with it. He ends up being stranded for 23 years in the Speed Force, you know, that mystical energy field that gives all the speedsters their powers, and spends that whole time running and trying to figure out how to get back. Basically, what happened is that Barry ran way too fast for his body to handle and he atomized himself. Thought to be dead by his closest friends, including Wally West, who took up the Flash mantle in his absence, Barry's apparent death was a huge shock for everyone, and also entirely his own fault. Check out more of the Flash for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1956's Showcase, number 4. Number 8. Power Girl and Raw Materials. You'd think that being weak to kryptonite would be their only weakness, considering how easy it seemed for people to get their hands on it. But Kara Zor-El from Earth 2 actually had another pretty big weakness at one point. They were vulnerable to unprocessed natural materials such as branches and rocks for a short while. This also includes stone, dirt, and sand. Basically anything that can be found on Earth that isn't man-made. In Peter David's Supergirl Volume 4 number 16, she gets knocked to the ground and impaled by a pretty big tree branch, which, in her defense, would put anyone on the ground. Supergirl helps yank out the branch, and with this weirdly sociopathic smile on her face, she asked, "What, are you vulnerable to wood?" It took a second, but after she was no longer in pain, she replied, "Worse, to any raw, unprocessed natural materials. So, sticks and stones really can break my bones." God, dumb joke and even dumber weakness. Check her out for yourself in her first appearance in 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, number 5.
In at 7, open spaces. Imagine this. You're Peter Parker. You're chasing after a villain who's committed a slew of crimes and put innocent lives in danger. While tracking them down, your investigation takes you to a big, wide open area, like a rural field or some other vacant land with relatively flat ground. And that is when you get jumped. But guess what? There's nothing to shoot off your webs and swing around from. Sure, you can jump and be acrobatic and whatnot, but if there's one thing that Marvel's PS4 Spider-Man video game has taught us, it's that Spidey dominates when he's up in the air. And it is much easier to get hurt or shot at when you're on the ground. Open areas also provide a lack of cover, which may not help out other heroes who lack the invulnerability that others have in their skill set. All in all, city's good. Big open desert spaces, probably very bad. Unless you've got like a camouflage ability, in which case this list is not for you. Moving on to something very ridiculous but also fairly accurate.
Number 6. Human Torch and Asbestos. Now don't get me wrong, Johnny Storm aka the Human Torch is a force to be reckoned with. Not only can he create, absorb, and manipulate fire, which is pretty awesome on its own, but his Nova Flame is hot enough to vaporize the particles of anything in his way, whether it's a bullet, a building, a bad guy, etc. Interestingly enough though, his powers can't seem to penetrate asbestos. Now this doesn't seem like much of a weakness now, given that asbestos is now banned across most of the world, but back when the Human Torch was first created by Stan Lee and Ernest Hart in 1963, it was a much more common thing, as it was used to insulate pipes and wires, soundproof rooms, and even make cheap garden furniture. In Strange Tales number 111, Asbestos Man came into play, dialed up Johnny Storm, and arranged a showdown between the two. The Human Torch wasn't really all that into it, but he agreed nonetheless and showed up completely underprepared. Asbestos Man used his super asbestos suit, a fire retardant shield, and a fisherman's net to go toe to toe with the Human Torch, and he wreaked havoc on the Human Torch until he developed mesothelioma and needed an oxygen tank to stay alive. Moral of the story, kids, is always prepare for anything, and please, don't breathe asbestos. Check out more of the Human Torch's story starting with 1961's Fantastic Four, number 1.
Number 5. Cyclops. While Scott is trained to have great control over his powers, he's nothing without his visor, or his more casual sunglasses if we're talking about the film starring James Marsden as Cyclops. The ruby quartz lenses, or long single lens, help Scott to see without having to worry about shooting everyone up with his optic blasts, while his combat visor also allows him to direct his optic blasts in more specific ways, controlled by a ton of buttons that are in his gloves that allow him to change the mirrors and the screen in his visor so that he can manage all kinds of masterful targeting when it comes to taking down enemies. But if he loses his glasses or his visor, he actually can't see because he has to keep his eyes closed, and his powers become more of a hazard than an asset. This has rendered him useless before in battle and made him terrified to harm those he loves, his fellow X-Men and his longtime love, Jean Grey. I've also wondered if him seeing red means you could use this to your advantage when fighting Cyclops and find a way to sneak up on him, like if you had really good red camouflage made. So like he wouldn't see you. He'd be like, all I see is red. Where's that person?
Number 4. Gladiator and Self-Confidence. Cal Lark, aka Gladiator, is arguably one of the most powerful comic book heroes ever, gifted with planet-shattering strength, super speed, heat vision, frost breath, and a few psionic abilities as well. He's a superhero anyone would love to be. However, even though he is loved, he never really learned to love himself, and that is sometimes his biggest downfall. Although low self-esteem isn't exactly fun for anyone, trust me, I know, for Gladiator it's actually a fatal weakness. His power fluctuates according to his confidence, as seen in Dan Abnett's and Andy Lanning's War of Kings crossover in 2009. Get him to doubt himself or even his abilities for 1 second and he can be defeated by opponents with far weaker abilities than him. A prime example of this is shown in War of Kings number 3 when Rocket Raccoon manages to convince Gladiator his gun will hurt himself and despite withstanding far worse in the past, succumbs to self-fulfilling prophecy and is beaten. Give this story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's X-Men number 107.
Moving on to number 3, low confidence. Captain Britain, Gladiator, and Zatanna all share this weakness. Low confidence, especially in the superhero community, is one that can really punch you in the gut and lead to dire consequences. Generally, when this is a weakness of a superhero's, the more confidence they have, the better they are in combat. And then the opposite, the less confidence they have, the worse they are in combat. While some villains have taken advantage of this over the years, you would think that demoralizing and humiliating superheroes would be way more of a trend in the criminal community, since it's proven so effective on some other heroes. Just saying. I mean, I feel like that's a low though. Just go around on the superhero social media accounts and bully them online as some anonymous troll. Just make them feel terrible about themselves. And then they get out there and they're like, everyone hates me. And then they get beaten up by a villain. It's a hard life for a hero. You gotta have tough skin.
Number 2, Green Lantern and Wood. If you're a bit confused, that is totally okay. This is not a weakness that is common across all of the Green Lanterns. It's specific to the very first Green Lantern, Alan Scott. Despite being armed with a magical ring and a spectrum of pretty much limitless powers, Scott seemed to have another fatal weakness other than the color yellow. He first realized that this might be a problem for him after he was hit in the face with a wooden log. And then after a series of wins and victory laps, Scott realized tree bark might be his potential undoing. Put a little more succinctly, items made of wood cannot be lifted or broken by energy from the ring, nor can barriers of emerald energy stop projectiles crafted from wood. Apparently this vulnerability to wood was because the green flame was an incarnation of green growing things, and thus could not be turned against them. Guess you could say he, can't get wood. Check out the first Green Lantern for yourself, starting with 1940s All-American Comics number 16. Number 1, Captain Marvel Jr. and his own name. Poor Freddie Freeman. Out of all of the weaknesses on this list today, he probably drew the shortest straw because his weakness is his own name. If Captain Marvel Jr. tries to introduce himself to a superpowered ally or for some reason feels the need to say his name in the middle of a battle, he'll instantly be transformed back into Freddie Freeman, a ordinary young lad who relies on a crutch to walk. Or if he speaks his superhero alias aloud in the guise of Freddie Freeman, he'll transform into a shimmering beacon of muscly justice and give himself away. Jerry Ordway tried getting around this flaw during Captain Marvel Jr.'s sporadic appearances in Teen Titans between 1995 and 1998 by having Freeman refer to himself as CM3, since he was one of the 3 members of the Captain Marvel family at the time. Also, he could avoid accidental transformations, but that change didn't really stick around. Honestly, for someone who inspired many of Elvis's onstage looks, that is one weakness that I don't know if I can overlook. Check him out for yourself in his first DC appearance in 1995's The Power of Shazam, number 3.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Adamantium and Vibranium. Perhaps one of the greatest superheroes to go toe-to-toe with the Incredible Hulk is Wolverine. Especially in the Old Man Logan storyline, we find the Hulk as one of the few remaining superheroes on Earth. Now this is when the Hulk had a little Hulk gang running around. They were actually responsible for the death of Wolverine's family. So when Wolverine came around to fight it out with the Hulk, he just straight up swallowed him. That's the thing about being a beast like this, you can literally just eat your problems away. But thanks to Wolverine's claws, he's able to easily tear his way out. See, Wolverine, X-23, and the Black Panther are all able to pierce the Hulk's skin. We can see this take place in World War Hulk X-Men. And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really helps us now, especially while we're working from home up here in Canada. Thank you so much for being patient. You guys are the best. Now let's get right back to this list. Number 9, Toxins. In The Incredible Hulk Volume 2, Issue 110, we catch up with Banner after the spaceship that took him to Sakaar blew up. This explosion took out many of his new otherworldly friends, including his new queen. So now he came back to Earth ready to dish out revenge, but thankfully Scorpion, Carmilla Black, injected him with a toxin that counteracts the Hulk's healing factor. Her arm is packed with a cocktail of new toxins designed by S.H.I.E.L.D. to goof up his gamma-powered physiology. Number 8, Rage Nullification. See, part of the problem lies in the solution sometimes. In the MCU, we see Natasha able to bring Banner back after the green guy has punched the enemies out of existence. All she has to do is rub his hands and say the sun is getting real low, and voila, now we have Bruce Banner back. In the comics, this is also a weakness. When that rage gets neutralized, Banner is extremely vulnerable, seeing as he's now just a scientist at that point. Betty Ross can also calm down the Hulk, and she does so in issue 141 of The Incredible Hulk. And Sentry as well was able to calm him in Century Hulk issue 1. Telepaths have also been known to be able to do this as well. They just need empathy potential and they can emulate this effect. The Inhuman Randall Jessup has the ability to cast out negative emotions, so he can come into play here as well.
Number 7, Magic.
Superman can probably take 1,000 bullets to the body and then walk away like it's no problem. But the magician David Blaine, you never know, he could be pretty threatening to a Kryptonian. That's right, magic can indeed hurt Superman. His biomatrix is a powerful asset, but the strength in it can be used against him, specifically in the form of radiation that's found in magical energies. Electromagnetic or extra-dimensional signatures disrupt his force field, weakening him, of course. Now, it depends what kind of magic is being used and how much of it is being shot out at him, but magic in general has unpredictable effects on him, and his magical enemies have often been the ones that are the most dangerous or come out on top, at least for a little bit. Number 6, enchanted weapons. While Wanda and her magic hands sure do a number on Bruce, enchanted weapons are also effective. We see this in Defenders issue 1. Now at first the Hulk thinks that he's above enchanted beings. He's like waving hands, glowing fingers, those are all stupid things. The Hulk can smash, I mean who needs magic anyways? So his plan was to just smash and smash because he never gets tired. Then in comes Strange and he wraps the Hulk in the crimson bands of Sidorak, all the while the Hulk is begging to be let free. He just wants to destroy something. He's boasting the entire time about how he never gets tired and just wants something to hit, something the same size as him. And then when Necrodamus enters the fight wielding an enchanted blade, well, the Hulk sure feels that one.
Number 5, Riot. Physically, Riot is probably one of the most strongest Life Foundation symbiotes. It appears to be the largest in size when it comes to natural muscle mass, and its unique ability, which admittedly isn't super unique, is it can create blunt weapons. Or rather, it's not a really unique ability, but more a distinct preference of the symbiote. I mean, all symbiotes can create blunt weapons, but Riot prefers to create blunt weapons, possibly because they possess so much strength, which would bolster their force when it comes to their hits. Like all other Clintar symbiotes, Riot is also weak to sonic and heat attacks, and being part of the hybrid group, prefers to be bonded with the other life symbiotes, or at least near them whenever it can be.
Number 4, gamma radiation. Halloween was always awesome growing up. I would eat the candy while I was collecting the candy. I was just giving myself more and more energy to collect, and I did good too. But too much candy and now you're sweating. Now you feel sick, you're done for the night. Just the sight of a Kit Kat makes you wanna Too much of a good thing sure can hinder your night. Same goes with the Hulk when it comes to gamma radiation. Sure, it's the exact thing that powers him up so he's able to throw statues at his coworkers, but too much gamma radiation and it's bad news. Like in the Future Imperfect storyline, for example, Professor Hulk travels to a dark future where he crosses paths with, well, himself. Future stronger version of himself, the Maestro. The Hulk could not beat this guy, no chance. So instead, he tricked the Maestro and got him to time travel back to the past where that first gamma bomb went off, the same bomb that created the Hulk in the first place. So when the bomb goes off, now there's too much gamma in the mix, and this results in the passing of the Maestro. Too much gamma, too many Kit Kats, tomatoes, tomatoes. Number 3, Muhammad Ali. I have to include this because it's too amazing not to mention. Okay, so earlier in this list, I talked about how red sun energy can weaken a Kryptonian. So even though Superman is weak now, he's still probably at least a really strong dude, right? Well, there was once one comic book issue where a weakened Superman legit had to fight Muhammad Ali, and it was more intense than Mayweather vs. McGregor, at least in my opinion. Definitely yours too. See, this one shot made its debut back in 1978, written by Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams. And it featured the Man of Steel and of course Muhammad Ali. And it was part of the all-new collector's edition where this alien named Ratlar, who's part of a species known as the Scrub, they visit Earth. And they demand that we pick our best fighter to go against theirs. Now of course theirs being a behemoth named Hunya, so yikes. Now, if we refuse, well, the Scrub will then destroy the planet. So Muhammad Ali argues that since Superman isn't technically from Earth, Muhammad Ali must be the one who fights, which is so amusing for us. We're like, yes, thank God, do it. So Ratlar is amused by this and he wants to know who is better of the two. So he pins the two champs up against each other and the fight is set to take place on Bodes, which is orbiting a red star. So no more crazy powers for Superman, just old fisticuffs. And Muhammad Ali drops the Man of Steel. I would say I'm surprised, but Ali is literally the greatest, so not too surprised here. Number 2, the puppy bomb. Okay, whatever you're imagining in your head as soon as I said the puppy bomb, it's much nicer than that. It's not a bomb full of puppies. We're not just gonna launch golden retrievers at Bruce Banner and hopes that it helps, I don't know. But we are launching cute puppies. That's something we are doing. In Indestructible Hulk issue 1, S.H.I.E.L.D. pulls out all the stops to calm down the big guy. And I mean all the stops. Yeah, they just launch a bunch of puppies at him and he goes from ah to I mean that ought to do a trick. If I saw one puppy, I'd be like, okay. But if I saw like a bunch of puppies, I'd be like, okay. And number 1, Bruce Banner. Other Hulks are able to contain their anger issues while growing into the green monster. She-Hulk is calm and cool and collect. She's got a hand on the wheel. Amadeus Cho, same idea. He's able to keep the angries out as long as he eats food. He keeps the brain going rather than the muscles, you know? But the Incredible Hulk is different, unfortunately. See, Bruce's childhood has something to do with it. His father was awful to him, really awful. He got mad at Bruce because of his high intellect. He ended up going to prison for taking out his mother, so Bruce already had a lot of pain inside him, even as a young kid, before Gamma stuff. The ghost of his father constantly haunted him, and when the Hulk comes out and takes over Banner, those early childhood memories are the fuel behind the fists. It's part of what makes the Hulk story so unique, that Banner has to fight this dark version of himself while also being a superhero.
Number 10, Hope Summers. Hope is one of those mutants who has become problematic for writers because she is just so powerful. She can adopt any other mutant's powers, and there is no limit to how many power sets she can use at once. She doesn't drain the powers from them like Rogue, simply mimics them, but she also gains the peak performance level of their powers as well. And she doesn't have to touch someone to use their abilities, so that's a plus side to one of her weaknesses, I guess. So how do we cap someone like that? How do we make her writable and relatable? Well, usually we make her feel conflicted and want to run away. We've all wanted to run away at some point, right? But for weaknesses, they could have made it a certain ability, a certain power that she just can't use and can drastically cause her harm as a result or something like that. But nope, she's the mutant messiah after all, so instead her weakness is distance. And time, to an extent. So in other words, the easiest way to defeat Hope is just run away from her. If she can't get to you and you have enough distance between you and her, then she can't really mimic your abilities. And really, distance is her only main weakness. Well, unless she gets her hands on a teleporter's abilities, because then she'd have to teleport away from the teleporter, and if she teleports too far away from them, how can she use their abilities? Wait a minute, I feel like this is a weakness that wasn't fully thought through. How does she use teleportation abilities? Does she have to take teleporter with her? What? Number 9, Wolverine. Logan is definitely one of the most popular mutants, if not the most popular, and known for being one of the coolest and toughest mutants out there. So, what's he doing on this list? Well, not everything about him is as cool as you'd think, but one thing especially, that is his weakness to magnets. Now, granted, this makes sense. His adamantium skeleton is one of his greatest strengths, although likely it can be his greatest weakness in a way, as in old age it kind of poisons him. But beyond that, it also becomes a weakness when he comes up against anyone with magnetic powers, namely, you guessed it, Magneto. Magneto actually once used his power to rip the adamantium out of Wolverine. Ouch. Actually, I feel like he maybe has done this more than once in the comics, proving just how deadly this weakness can be for Logan. While it's no joke, and it does make sense, it just sounds ridiculous, and it makes me think of Wolverine falling to his knees if we were just to cover him in fridge magnets. And I know we'd likely need something stronger than fridge magnets to cause him harm, but still, this imagery is pretty hysterical to me. So if you think of Wolverine's weakness to magnets, it makes sense, but it just sounds ridiculous on paper. Weaknesses, magnets. Number 8, Nate Gray. Nate Gray might be insanely powerful and be able to do pretty much anything, but there is one guy who can cause him some serious harm. That's his kind of alternate version of himself / weird multiverse half-brother, Cable. Nathan Summers. Because these two share such an identical size signature, being in one another's presence actually severely messes with both of them. It causes their powers to go slightly haywire, forcing them to randomly share memories with one another, and even causes them visible pain. This is an especially odd weakness, considering that this doesn't really happen with any of the other alternates, or any of their other alternates, including Cable's evil clone, Strife. I think if it's gonna happen with Nate Gray, shouldn't it happen with Strife? Nor does it seem to be a common occurrence among any other alternates in the Marvel Universe. So, very strange.
Number 7, Adam Strange and forced deportation. Who knew that archaeologists could also be superheroes? Well, apparently Adam Strange did, because that is exactly what he is. He inadvertently found himself on the planet Ran and was gifted with all the powers of a superhero in mystery and space. And it's not exactly explained why. Sounds pretty great, right? I mean, what could possibly be his weakness? Well, it's not actually his fault or in his control. This life of bliss he lives on Rann is frequently interrupted by his rather inconvenient transportations back to Earth, where he has no powers at all. The technology responsible for bringing him to Rann, the Zeta Beam, only allows him to remain there for as long as it's transmitting back to Earth. And as it takes the beam a few good years to reach Strange's home planet, it's not exactly easy to catch a ride back. Strange might have been recruited as Rand's savior, but his timing issues really make this role more of a temporary gig. He could be midway through his heroics before vanishing without a single trace. He even left his wife to nearly get eaten by a tiger once. Luckily, as Alan Moore's Swamp Thing series clarified, the Rannians are more than capable of looking after themselves when Strange isn't around, and thank goodness for that, because I wouldn't be relying on Strange much either. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1986's Outsiders, number 6.
Number 6. Kitty Pryde, or Captain Kate as she's going by now, has a weird weakness in the sense that her powers are kind of also her weakness. Okay, hear me out. So, for one, she used to have the restriction, and still sometimes does, I think, depending on who is writing her, that she has to hold her breath while phasing. Now, fortunately, this has pretty much been changed because her powers have increased and it was really pretty silly. Like, she has to hold her breath, yet she does all of these things. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. In fact, I think it was such a silly restriction on her powers that Marvel realized, oh, we should maybe change this. But beyond that, as useful as her powers are, they have also gotten her into trouble. So they're both a pro and a con in a way. Like when she managed to phase into that giant bullet, but found herself unable to phase back out due to the material that the bullet was made of and how thick it was. And yet, that material that prevented her from phasing out did not prevent her from phasing into the bullet and phasing her and the entire bullet through the planet Earth. So what is up with that? Also, is that bullet made out of adamantium? Because I couldn't find anything about that, but I know that Kitty Pryde has an issue with adamantium. So I'm just wondering, if anyone knows, let me know.
In at number 5, gun laws. Now, a supervillain could use the lenient gun laws in the US to their advantage. Say that they wanted to gun down a hero and get away with it. Just lure them onto your own property and then fire away and then claim it was self-defense. I know, like I said, this is actually a very dark number because it happens in real life, but not with heroes, with regular people. Now, we won't be surprised to see something like that legally work out in favor of our hypothetical villain here. Although, that is kind of just strictly the US. That smug trick would not work in Canada, or a lot of other countries in the world.
Number 4, Rogue. Rogue's main weakness is actually herself. Later on in her story, we learn that it is actually Rogue's own fear that holds her back. Her abilities could be controlled if she simply wasn't so afraid of them. Her first kiss with Cody Robbins, which left him in a coma, ended up being the event that created this fear in her and allowed her to believe that she was dangerous for the rest of her life, and as such, she became dangerous. Some self-actualization stuff going on in her story. But once she overcomes this fear, she is actually granted more control over her powers. Now, while I love this story and journey for her, especially because it's kind of relatable if you're the type of person to self-doubt, the revelation of this weakness also changes her character a lot. For a lot of people, the struggle of being so powerful yet so dangerous is what people really love about Rogue. How she is tormented by the fact that she is basically forced to live a life of full-on social distancing, 24/7. So for it to have all been in her head, it feels a little bit like a cop-out. Years of torment could have apparently been avoided if Rogue had just believed in herself more?
Number 3, Daredevil and loud noises. Now, we all likely know this, but Matt Murdock's loss of vision took away the natural gift of eyesight that we all take for granted and replaced it with echolocation, an uncanny radar sense that allows him to basically see things through sound. Unfortunately for many heroes, their greatest strength can also be their greatest weakness, and such is the case for Daredevil, as his extreme sensitivity to sound can completely incapacitate him. In Daredevil Volume 2 West Case Scenario, he is subjected to a high decibel ultrasound, 120 decibels to be exact, by the dastardly Purple Man, who knows his weapon is excruciating for a man of Daredevil's gift. Daredevil's head spins and he looks like a man under a sorcerer's spell, leaving him completely vulnerable to a follow-up attack. The same can actually be done using intense smells as well, since his sense of smell was also heightened after losing his eyesight. Although Daredevil can and does go toe-to-toe with pretty much anyone in a fight, he will get utterly emasculated by a stink bomb or a supersonic sound. Check out more of Matt Murdock for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1964's Daredevil, number 1.
Number 2, Gambit. Remy LeBeau often seems to be considered an underrated X-Men. He can create massive explosions using kinetic energy, which he focuses on an object that is charged by his touch and then explodes. He also has great control over his powers. He can charge something with kinetic energy and actually time that explosion, but there are two things that you might have noticed in the comics when it comes to his character. He never seems to charge people or any other organic life forms. So what's up with that? For many, they might just think that Gambit actually chooses not to because, you know, he's a good guy. But it has been debated in the comics that this idea of charging living matter might not even be an option for Gambit. So he can charge anything basically non-living, but nothing that is alive. This is also a weakness that sometimes seems to be forgotten by writers, as it's not been completely consistent or fully explained. So sometimes he can do it, which is weird. And despite the amazing control that he exhibits, this was actually something granted to him by Mr. Sinister. Gambit actually made a deal with Sinister to operate on his brain in order to help him control his powers more, while also kind of limiting them so he doesn't basically go haywire and kill everyone he loves. The results of the surgery were both, of course, a strength and a weakness, as they granted Gambit more control while also limiting his powers somewhat. Also, making deals with Mr. Sinister is just usually ill-advised. The fact that that even happened in a comic with Gambit, it's strange. Number 1, Mastermind. Mastermind can create powerful illusions, ones that feel, smell, sound, taste, and look completely real. For example, if he creates a wall, it will feel like a wall, it'll smell like a wall, it'll taste like a wall. But if you can overcome how convincing this illusion seems, if you can just decide to run through that wall, you'll realize it isn't actually there. And his illusions can only exist as long as you believe them to be true. They require you to believe. So once you shatter one of his illusions, all the others will just come tumbling down after. Jason Wingard also has to concentrate for you to be able to see his illusion. So many people have taken him out in battle simply by distracting him momentarily. He also cannot control who sees his illusions and who doesn't. For example, if he creates a giant butterfly in a room, all who are in the room with it will see it. Anyone who has it within their line of sight will see it. In fact, you could say his weaknesses appear greater than his strengths in a lot of ways. Kind of a weird villain like that. Also, sometimes he's super powerful, sometimes he's not that powerful at all.
Number 10, Port Grind. Port Grind apparently has the same powers as Eddie Brock, Anti-Hero, and Venom of the 616 reality. But he also is a wild boar. And not even the wild kind of wild boar, more like a wild boar from a cartoon animated universe, where reality is warped somewhat due to everyone living like a toon. Think Toontown from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This is the home universe of alternate Spider-Man Spider-Ham, who is a pig. You may remember Spider-Ham from the animated film Into the Spider-Verse, but there are all sorts of toon-like animal folk as well, including this boar version of Venom. Number 9, Hybrid. While any of the 4 symbiotes that make up Hybrid are considered pretty tame, the 4 of them together is a little less tame. The cool thing about Hybrid is it combines the abilities and power sets of 4 of the Life Foundation symbiotes: Agony, Riot, Phage, and Lasher. However, there is also an element of weakness in their union. These symbiotes prefer being together because they are kind of like a little family unit and know that it makes them stronger ultimately. So break Hybrid up, separate its components, and not only will these symbiotes be weaker overall, but they also probably will be emotionally not great either, because they don't really like when you split them up. They don't like forced breakups. This kind of gives Hybrid an extra weakness in comparison to the standard Sound and Fire ones. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more symbiote lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Maniac. Mania, or Maniac as they were later known, is a symbiote that split off from Venom due to some crazy going-ons, which we'll actually dive into more later on this list. Mania, as it was known then, bonded to Andy Benton, a friend of Flash Thompson's who also happened to be a student at the time. This is back when Flash was a substitute gym teacher. Flash thought he was just sending a part of his own symbiote to Andy, but it was revealed that this part of Venom was its own thing, and it became known as Mania. Mania was pretty powerful while bonded with Andy, but as a symbiote on its own, it possessed just your average standard set of powers, making it not really very strong in comparison to some of the most powerful ones out there. Maniac was the name the symbiote became known by when it left Andy and was taken by the criminal Lee Price. Later on, Maniac would be killed in the Absolute Carnage event and absorbed.
Number 7, MAGIK users. In Avengers Age of Ultron, when Wanda Maximoff was introduced first as a villain, she played mind games with the entire team. In Wakanda, her and her brother met up with Ultron, and when the team arrives to stop the vibranium deal, Wanda then uses her magic to weaken the team. She of course gets Banner and he hulks out. big time. Now at this point in the MCU, like I mentioned, Black Widow was the only key to bringing Banner back out of the green guy. All she has to do is stroke his palm, tell him how the sun's getting low, and Bruce is back naked and afraid. But this time, Natasha was under some spells herself. She was too busy reliving her dark past while the Hulk just exploded and broke Johannesburg. It took Iron Man and his new Veronica Hulkbuster armor to come and knock some sense into him, or rather knock some sense out of him.
Number 6. Payback variant. This symbiote wasn't a symbiote in the same way as the ones from Clintar are. It instead was a being of pure electromagnetic energy that bonded with S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Mavis Trent. We don't know much about this new alien symbiotic species, but we do know that it bonding with Trent resulted in her getting superpowers and a cool new silver form that she could access whenever she was in a state of bliss or extreme joy or happiness. While this is a really cool idea for a character, symbiote, and design, the fact remains that the Payback symbiote was not as powerful as the ones that we usually see from Clintar. It did, however, come with some superhuman boosts to strength, speed, durability, and a healing factor. It also allowed Trent the power to fly and some cool electromagnetic and telepathic powers. Still, no shapeshifting and probably not as strong as someone like Venom or Carnage.
Number 5. Love. Yeah, of course I said it. When it comes to weaknesses, some would say that it's just the thing you love most used against you. Now this of course has come to light in many comics, movies, TV shows. It's not necessarily new. The whole damsel in distress thing, of course it's gonna work. Where in order to keep Superman to bend at your will, you just gotta get Lois Lane or Martha in your custody, and then you can get Superman to go and fist fight Batman. It's the best. And then we watch the movies eating popcorn. We're like, yes, keep fighting. In Batman vs Superman, we see Barry Allen pop in from the Speed Force to let Bruce know that Lois Lane is the key. What key? What was he talking about? Well, that plus the nightmare sequence, it was apparent in that film that she was the key in preventing the Man of Steel from going evil and causing this world to look like chaos. Their love is keeping Kal-El from going nuts. Check it out.
She was my world, and you took her from me.
Number 4. Venom clone. This is where Mania came from originally. That whole weird thing I said that I would dive into earlier, here we go. The Venom clone, as it was originally known, was created from a piece of the Venom symbiote's tongue that came into the possession of the Ararat Corporation. The goal for the clone initially was to use it to destroy all life on Earth. A pretty big goal for just a little piece of Venom's tongue. The clone, however, did somewhat live up to its potential in the sense that, while it didn't kill all life on Earth, it did kill some people, and it did escape. In the end, however, the clone was defeated when it fought against the OG Venom and ultimately was absorbed back into it. Or so we thought. Later on we'd get Mania from this, who technically is part of the clone, but the Venom clone had its whole story before that happened, so I kinda thought it would be fair to count it as a separate symbiote, as Mania was still kind of its own thing. And Mania was very different than the Venom clone, in terms of personality anyways.
Number 3. The Power Cosmic. The Silver Surfer is a big name on the list of the Hulk's weaknesses because the Silver Surfer possesses the Power Cosmic, which was given to him by Galactus himself. So now he has the ability to absorb and tap into ambient cosmic energy and channel it throughout his body. And at this point, he can take out planets if he feels like it. And the Hulk is not a planet. And most of the time he and the Silver Surfer cross paths, it usually ends up with the Silver Surfer coming out on top. Some powers you can't just punch away, you know?
Number 2. Poisons. While the poisons aren't actually symbiotes in the sense of alien beings from Clintar, they are symbiotic aliens, and I think are admittedly an overall weaker race in comparison to the symbiotes from Clintar. To me, the poisons feel like wannabe symbiotes. And I know that they're just different, but they are also so similar as well. It just makes me feel like the poisons were trying to be what Clintar symbiotes were, but then they got wiped out because they weren't as powerful. Their weakness ended up being their Hive Queen. Once she was destroyed, the whole thing fell apart. I guess that's kind of what the King in Black is for the symbiotes of Clintar, except that he was also asleep for forever and they mostly got on fine. And also he can be replaced, as we've seen Eddie Brock become the new King in Black following Null's defeat. Also, Carnage is, I think, now trying to steal that role. Everyone wants to be the King in Black. Number 1. Crowbar. Crowbar has a really tragic story and was a symbiotic alien that appeared in Venom Seed of Darkness issue number 1. Crowbar was a space explorer and sought to learn more about other civilizations and alien races, as his alien race most valued diversity of mind and of thought. He was corrupted by humanity's darker side and the inner demon of the id, which he came across while bonded to his host, scientist Nigel Donlevy. Eddie Brock ended up defeating Crowbar with a camera flash, as a being described as living darkness, light it turned out was, you know, one of its weaknesses. However, it was really the dark side of humanity that did Crowbar in. Eddie's camera flash snapped snapped it out of the violent rage that he was in, which it turns out had been brought upon by his bond to Don Levy and learning more about humanity. Krobo was so upset at being corrupted by the darkness of humanity, in order to prevent it from being spread throughout the rest of the cosmos, he decided to take his own life. Pretty weak in terms of his more fragile psyche and weakness to light on a planet like Earth that also has a very bright sun and very bright artificial lights, but pretty strong in terms of how depressing his story is and how it reflects on humanity and all of the terrible things about us. Strong story, weak symbiote.
In at number 10, sensitive senses. There are a fistful of characters whose powers include some sort of enhanced sense or senses, such as the case with Marvel's Daredevil, a man whose lack of vision doesn't stop him from being a fantastic hero. His accident, while responsible for the loss of his eyes, enhanced his other senses. Now this includes echolocation, an ability in which Matt Murdock can partially see thanks to his hearing acting like a powerful radar, kinda like a bat. But because of this, he's sensitive to loud noises, and in the past we've seen high decibel sounds mess him up. For example, in Daredevil Volume 2, Worst Case Scenario, Purple Man uses ultrasound to leave Matt in an excruciating amount of pain. Now this weakness goes beyond enhanced senses. Villains don't target extrasensory abilities nearly that much either, and you'd think that a foe would use that information of a hero's power and then find a way to overwhelm their minds. Instead, we more frequently see characters who have an invulnerability to psychic attacks being more of a threat to those who use telepathy, or telekinesis. In at number 9, no peripheral vision. This one kinda seems like a given, but I personally cannot think of a single comic in which I've seen this go down. Also, feel free to comment in those comments below and inform me. So, have you seen some of the cowls and helmets on these heroes? It's like wearing horse blinders on your head. The lack of peripheral vision should be a major issue in the superhero community, but we never really see or hear about it, do we? It would be easy to sneak up on some heroes and, being in their blind spot, attack them. Now obviously that wouldn't happen with a hero like Batman, who's just prepared for everything and can probably see out of the back of his head, but that being said, not everyone is Batman. It's also surprising that more heroes don't suffer from tunnel vision either. A self-imposed tunnel vision, that is. In at number 8, unprotected faces. Here's one that we really adore. So, say you're a superhero. You have superpowers and you want to put them to good use. So you whip up a costume and begin a career as a vigilante in your hometown. But a few neighborhood patrols in, you find yourself face to face with an armed criminal. He manages to catch you off guard and points a gun right at you. And bam! Shoots you right in the face, specifically where your mouth is, because like many other superheroes, you wear a cowl or a helmet that covers the top of your head and your eyes and the sides, but is lacking in the lower half of your face, leaving that area exposed. Now imagine if someone got close enough to Batman and stuck a gun right into his jaw and shot him point blank. Bruce Wayne can survive a lot, but a bullet to the brain, still pretty questionable. Although I feel like he would somehow be so prepared that he would know that was gonna happen, so maybe Bruce Wayne isn't the best example to use there.
Number 7. Magic. Magic's main weakness is her own emotions. She is capable of both good magic and dark magic, and when she feels intense emotions, if she gives into it, it can actually turn her dark, transforming her into her Dark Child persona, a sort of demonic and somewhat evil version of herself. So she's got similar problems to DC's Raven, of having to be careful about how strongly she feels about something. Having to not feel emotions as intensely for fear of what you do is about as serious as it is ridiculous. These weaknesses in comics seem to be given to the most powerful characters, because how else do you make them relatable and at least somehow defeatable? I mean, when Magic actually has all of her magical abilities, she's pretty OP.
And at 6, AK-47s. Or just guns in general. Okay, yes, this is a rather dark number, but you know it's true. While some heroes would be exempt from this harming them, like Superman for example, definitely could withstand a barrage of bullets, others who do not have that invulnerability would be majorly susceptible to gun wounds. We recently saw in Heroes in Crisis how devastating a mass shooting in the superhero world could be. It was a reminder that superheroes are not as invulnerable as we assume them to be, especially if their guard is down or they are hit multiple times. Riffing off of our last number in something equally as dark and kind of preposterous to think about in comics.
Number 5. Wonder Woman and being tied up. Superheroes don't come much more kick than Wonder Woman. She's an extremely skilled warrior with enough power to take on the gods and win, and she's shown time and time again that she can hold her own in the world of comic book heroes. However, the Golden Age Wonder Woman was bound by an interesting Amazonian rule that really did not work in her favor. Known as Aphrodite's Law, it states that when an Amazon girl permits a man to chain her bracelets of submission together, she becomes weak as other women in a man-ruled world. This gender-specific weakness lasted from Wonder Woman's debut in 1942 right through to the mid-80s, when DC finally retconned this out for good. This weakness is less literal than metaphorical, meant to demonstrate Marston's argument that women are only vulnerable to men when they choose to be, but still I am very glad that this has gotten rid of for good. Check out Wonder Woman more for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1942's All-Star Comics, Volume 1, number 8.
And at number 4, time management. Superheroes have lives too, you guys, and if there is one thing we've learned from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's hard to strive for a life of normalcy when you've got to kick evil's butt. Often heroes are forced to choose between regular life stuff and saving lives, the latter being a quite demanding responsibility. I mean, Superman even quit once upon a time because of this, and I mean, he almost immediately returned to being a hero when he realized that Metropolis was kinda screwed without him, but still, if a villain really wanted to grind a hero down and had the patience to do so, they could learn about their hero's schedule, figure out their secret identity of course, and then plan a series of attacks at times that would be really inconvenient for their foe. Just hack their iCloud and take a look at their calendar, and then wait for their life to gradually fall apart and affect their superheroing. Wait till they're already vulnerable and then strike when they're most stressed, distracted, and foggy-minded. It's a little manipulative, sure, but I mean, as far as some villains are concerned, whatever gets the job done, right?
Number 3, Iceman. Bobby is actually one of the most powerful mutants in the Marvelverse, and yet people might not always think of him when it comes to some of the most powerful mutants around. This is because what often holds Robert Drake back is his own imagination. Iceman has actually been capable of accomplishing insane feats with his powers, and may have been capable of that the entire time. He can create sentient ice golems and change not only his own form from ice to water, but he can also do that to others as well. What has prevented him from this? Well, his lack of imagination that he could do it. This fact also makes me wonder if this is true for other mutants apart from Bobby. Like, could all mutants just be a lot stronger if they were just more creative? Or in Rogue's case, if they believed in themselves more? Do they need to train less at Xavier's school and simply just take more elective arts courses and expand their minds? Or maybe some more therapy courses, deal with their stuff.
Moving on to number 2, identity reveal. Now you'd think with the number of villains who have discovered superheroes' identities over the years, there would be a lot more whistleblowing in comics. Case in point, the Joker. When he knew Batman's true identity to be Bruce Wayne, he covered for the Caped Crusader and didn't tell anyone. Partially because, you know, he was obsessed with him and wanted to get him himself, but, you know, he's a fun individual. Quite literally. Now this is partially because the Joker is insane and utterly obsessed with Batman, therefore does not want anyone else to finish him off. But what excuses do other villains have? Revealing a superhero's identity or trying to rip off their masks in battle to expose them to the public would have a drastic effect on the character. It would ruin their private life, put them and all of their loved ones at risk constantly, and make it next to impossible to retain any sort of normalcy in their lives. A revealed identity though has helped some heroes rather than hindered them in the past. The likes of Ozymandias, for example, who used his fame to build an empire, or the Great Machine in Brian K. Vaughan's Ex Machina, who revealed his own identity to benefit his turn to politics. But generally we think it may hinder more than help in many cases, so it's surprising that more villains don't use it as a calming tactic to get what they want, although there are quite a few who have done that in the past. And last but not least, in at number 1, wardrobe malfunction. And no, we are not talking the likes of Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake, friends, and that is a bit of an aged reference, so if you know it just makes me feel old. When you think of death by cape, you often think of one of 2 famous instances. The first is Doctor Strange being strangled by his cloak in Marvel's Ultimatum. The second is Dollar Bill, one of the vigilantes on the Minutemen team in the 30s and 40s from Watchmen. The latter got his cape stuck in a revolving door, and a smart criminal used that opportunity to shoot him point blank. When you consider how effective using a hero's wardrobe against them could be, it's almost surprising that there aren't more villains trying to grab hold of heroes' capes to yank them close, strangle them, or put them in some sort of precarious position.